All right, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, this meeting is called to order. This is a joint general government subcommittee town council meeting Thursday, December 19th, 2024, 6 p.m. in the Veterans Meeting Room. First item on the agenda, or the second item on the agenda is roll call. Councilor Chenier.
Here.
Councilor Dow.
Here.
Citizen member Clements is not here. Citizen member Derek Julian.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Third item on the agenda is review and discuss amending Southbridge zoning bylaw to add section 8.10 accessory dwelling units, which complies with the Massachusetts Affordable Homes Act, and recommend action to town council for a public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Councilor Chenier?
Should somebody explain it first, or?
That would be
I can
helpful.
go.
No, if we have somebody here to explain.
Yes. Hi. Katie Yoder, town planner. First off, the timeline of this memo is that on December 4th, the Southbridge Planning Board created this draft to comply with the state's new ADU by right legislation. Then as of December 6th, the state came forward with their draft regulations for this law, which the law will go into effect as of February 3rd of 2025. The bylaw is meant to just be a local version that is in compliance with the state regulations. And if you'd like further detail, since the bylaw that the town put together, that the town planning board put together was before these regulations came into effect, there are a few things that will need to be edited to comply with the state regulations. But it was the planning board's opinion that this could happen through the process as there are public hearings with the town council, and as this bylaw is given public input through that process.
Could you tick off what those two things are?
Yes. So first would be the definition of an R1 zoning district. So included in the Southbridge zoning bylaws, it said that ADUs are allowed as a matter of right in R1 zoning district. In the state's draft regulations, ADUs are allowed in single-family residential zoning districts. They define a single-family residential zoning district as any district where single-family residential dwellings are permitted or an allowable use, including any zoning districts where single-family residential are allowed as of right by special permit, variance, waiver, or other zoning relief, or discretionary zoning approval. Another area.
And that would then expand to R1, 2, 3?
Yeah, we say it's allowed in R2 and R3, we would take that out and put no. We just say that single-family zone is only allowed in, single-family residence is only allowed in single-family zone, in R1. Right now, we say it's available in R1, R2, R3. We would put R2 and R3 as no, according to the state's definition now.
Yeah, I heard it opposite.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Do that.
Hold on. One at a time, please. Okay. Councilor Chenier has his hand up.
Part of my researching, that was one of them. In our proposed bylaw, it's saying allowed as a matter of right in the R1 zoning district. If you read the state regulation, it says all R1 districts. So R1 is allowed in single-family districts, multiple family districts such as 2-family, 3 families, and it's even allowed in some of the commercial districts and industrial districts by permit.
Not in ours. It says
No, I'm just saying what the state regulation says. And then the state regulation oversees what the planning board does, if I understand it correctly reading. So it is my belief that that one section, as a matter of right for R1 zoning district, is a violation, I'm not gonna use violation, but is, contradicts the state regulation, and the state regulation is the supreme regulation, am I correct? In your, so, I disagree with the planning board on that part of it, because R1 is allowed in a two-family zone, R1's allowed in a three-family zone, and there are some areas in town that have single-family homes in industrial and commercial areas.
Under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, lesser use is allowed in the greater district, period. So R1 standard zoning reads, when you go to R1, it just drives residential and it does all that. Then when it goes, as it goes up, it says any use allowed in R1 plus this. So that would put it pretty much in every district.
And then, if I may continue, if you look under the state regulation that was permitted, single-family residential zone district, any zoning district where single-family residential dwellings are permitted or are an allowable use, including any zoning district where single-family residential dwellings are allowed as a right by special permit, variance, waiver, or other zoning relief or discretionary zoning approval. So that, as far as that's put out by the state, and I feel that that supersedes what is being written by the local planning board on that particular item.
Anybody else? Just to note that citizen member Clemens has arrived. Did you want to be
Thank you.
recognized?
I'm here,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
I just, when you make a note to saying what you're reading, and if you could just point out where you're getting that from specifically, so that we can, those who want to follow along can. So when you were reading your section, I was like, where was that section? You know, I just wanted to make sure that I'm in the right spot. That's all. When
Yes.
I'm just asking if any, in the draft, right, you have the draft, and you have the state,
Second
which I have,
paragraph.
and which I've read a few times, but I'm just saying, when you read it, just say where you're taking it from, that's all. So anybody say where you're taking it from, so we can kind of follow along. That would be great. Thank you. That's all. That was what I wanted to say.
Through the chair.
For now.
I just want everybody to understand, Mike and I attended a class late last week where the law writers from the state, the ones that put this in play, was trying to explain it to us. And they basically added tiny homes to it. And what they did was they included it under the Dover Act. So this is pretty much protected in more ways than we can think of, because it falls under the Dover Amendment now. The state wasn't foolish, they know what they're doing.
Could you finish going through the few differences?
Could you just explain what the Dover Amendment is? 'Cause
Yes, I'm not sure
if
what that
anybody
is.
knows what
Yeah, well, the Dover Amendment's a protected act, it goes for schools, churches. What it does is, it allows things in any zone. It's kind of hard to fight after that. If somebody wanted to come in and put up a church, okay? And they wanted to put a 600 occupant church in the middle of a residential zone, they're allowed. Can't stop it. It's protected. So the only thing we can do is try and make it uniform to the area. So it kind of binds everybody's hands. And this is thrown under that same premises, so we can't, there's very little we're gonna be able to control.
Okay. Ms. Dean?
Yes, I was just wondering, Katie, did you want to pick up where you left off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first note from the draft is about the R1 zoning district, which is the language the planning board used, but differs from the regulations that came later. Another consideration based on the new regulations would be parking in relation to bus stops. In the section, the planning board section on parking, that they identify in trying to comply with the initial state law and what the language was at the time, that unless the ADU is within half a mile of an official bus stop, it must require one off-street parking. This means that off-street parking spaces would be waived within half a mile, of a bus stop. It was unclear what the definition of a bus stop would be for Southbridge, but the state legislation clearly defines it in its definition. A bus station is a location serving as a point of embarkation from any bus operated by a transit authority for routes that allow flag stop locations where passengers may signal for a bus stop, such as the case of Southbridge. Any point along its designated route, the entire route shall be considered a bus station. And one final question that I think has come up about this initial draft is on site plan approval as an action of the planning board. One of their changes they made in, again, using an initial draft that Munson created with the help of Ken Comia, our previous interim planner. And Munson created this after the law came into effect, but before any regulations were received. And they put out a number of conditions along with a site plan approval. The planning board actually limited these from what they initially were to try and comply with what the state considers unreasonable restrictions on approval of an ADU. And in their definition, again from the regulations, a site plan review is defined as a clear and objective process established by a local ordinance or bylaw by which a municipal board or authority may review and impose reasonable terms and conditions on the appearance and layout of a proposed use of land or structures prior to the issuance of a building permit. Yes, those are the main definitions from the state legislation and what the planning board has put into their draft.
Couple things. When someone comes and wants to put up an ADU, does this have to go in front of the planning board?
Special permit.
If through you, Chair, if this draft were to be accepted as part of the bylaw, they would have a site plan approval. The planning board does not have for the first ADU on a property, they do not have the right to deny unless it in some way did not meet building code.
So it goes to building before, and
Yes.
Dave will determine if it goes to you.
Yes.
Okay. Number 2, correct me if I'm wrong, Title 5.
Mhm.
One dwelling on a septic system, correct?
Correct.
What if they come for an ADU for a separate dwelling?
If your system is sized big enough for it, then you'll be allowed to tie into it. If it's not sized enough, or if it's not big enough, you can enlarge the system or put in a separate system. They're doing the same with wells.
I was just gonna say, the well's the same thing?
Yes. Same with wells, which in turn, I don't think the state thought it through, but that would make it a community well, which is gonna give the state more work because after so many people start using one water supply, the state has to test the water.
So, with that being said, I know that the wells have to put out so many gallons per minute per dwelling.
Yeah,
So the wells are gonna have to be tested
yeah,
in order to get a permit to put up another dwelling.
yeah. They'll have to be tested. If it's not sufficient, they'll have to drill another well.
Okay. 9 times out of 10 on any property, you have a well, has to be 100 feet from a septic.
Mhm.
9 times out of 10 in this town, there isn't enough room to put 2 wells on one lot.
Mhm.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Steve?
Could Ted just elaborate a tiny bit on the PWS, the public water supply issue? Why is it a big deal if the state has to test the water?
Because if it's called a community well. Community wells all go through the state. It's not, because you're feeding more than one family. It's more than one unit. It's not like town water supply. It's a drilled well. So what they do is they test it for chloroform, bacteria, and they make sure it's clear. Sometimes you'll get a boil of water odor and stuff like that, but
But why is it a hindrance?
it's, just gonna give more work to the state. I don't think they thought that part through.
Oh, okay, but it's not potentially going
No,
to.
no, it's not gonna hold anything
Okay.
up.
I'm just trying
You
to.
can frack a well, you know, if your well is coming in, you need, I think it's 5 gallons a minute
I believe so, yeah.
per household. Most wells that are being drilled now usually pushing 7 or 8. And if you frack it, you could
You
probably
get
get
more.
to, yeah,
Yep.
you could probably get to the 10, which will serve 2 houses. But
Council Chairman?
Just a couple of things.
Is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
so, on that note, I'm glad you brought that up. Now that it's gonna be a community water supply, the state has to keep track of that.
Yep.
If they frack it and they get to the 10, are they gonna test it yearly to make sure it
Yeah,
stayed at that 10?
yeah, they will have to monitor it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done, I'm all set, thank you.
Council Chairman.
Just a couple of things. We're gonna go to site plan review, bottom of the page. Is it, if I read the regulation correctly, site plan review is not necessary for 1 unit ADU, am I correct? That is an option.
Depends on the situation.
It depends on the situation.
So when will it be necessary? Is that the question?
Yeah, I guess you could use it that way. When would it be necessary to go before the site? If I read this right, it said all ADUs are required to obtain site plan approval from the planning board pursuant to the procedure in section 2.6 of this zoning bylaw, provided that the site plan review criteria shall only be limited to the following. It is recommended, and then the word recommended is what? It is recommended that the ADU minimizes trees, vegetation, soil removal, and grade changes. It is recommended that the architectural style be compatible with the existing principal dwelling on the subject property. ADUs shall be serviced by adequate water supply and sewer or septic system, and a plan shall demonstrate adequate parking as required hereunder and shall maximize the convenience and safety of vehicle and pedestrian movement within the property in relations to the adjacent way. So I look at that as their recommendations that don't need to be followed if the people don't want to follow it. Am I correct?
Through the chair, when we met with the state, they clarified that quite a bit.
Okay.
And what we were told in our role is it follow the same thing as you would for a single-family house. Okay? If a single-family house is not supposed to go to planning board, then neither is the ADU. It's supposed to be treated the same. That's the way the state is playing.
So the determination whether it goes before the planning board is based on your issuance of a building
It
permit.
depends on the situation. If we run into a situation, you have a non-conforming lot. Say we have a pre-existing non-conforming lot with a grandfathered structure on it already.
Right.
They have a tight area to deal with, and they want to throw an ADU on it. Well, okay, parking is restricted because of the lot style, of the lot size. In a certain situation like that, depending on what we have for an area, whether it's town water, town sewer, or whether it's septic and well, and how it's gonna get hooked up, that we may throw towards planning board just so they can get an idea of where it is and look at it, so we don't congest the area. But other than that, I didn't say anything.
But to go back to that congested area that we talked about, I believe the ADU allows congested areas.
Yeah,
And they allow almost cluster development.
right, but they don't want it to destroy the aesthetics, the integrity of the neighborhood.
Right, so my thing is, instead of making everybody that does an ADU go before the planning board, I would preferably have it determined by the building inspection
That's what's going on.
department
Yeah,
and not have a rule that says all
right.
shall go to it. So that's the site plan approval.
Uh-huh.
It's up to him if he wants.
Could I ask a clarifying point?
Yes,
Question?
go ahead.
When you say site plan approval, are we all on the same page? Katie said, site plan approval, you can't deny. You
Oh, I
just, you're
understand
just
that.
reviewing it. Okay, I'm just making sure.
But the site plan regulation that's being written says all ADUs
How, again, I just want to
go
make sure
before
the
the
site plan approval
review, and the site plan review, I take it as the planning board,
is the planning board, but they can't deny the project.
I didn't-
Okay.
that part of it.
Well, when we met with our class, the state specifically said, we cannot go out and make them jump through hoops that they need not jump through, okay? So for us to go and say, okay, you gotta go for site plan review and make them go through another step and make them pay more money, that's not gonna be allowed.
Right,
The state's
and that's
gonna shut
my,
that down.
my point of this particular line item on the thing is, if we don't have to make the person who wants to do an AU or whoever wants to develop one need not go before the planning board, it's just another step of bureaucracy I don't think is necessary, that the building department could handle that part of it, and then they would determine whether it needed to go to the planning board for their opinion on it. Okay, so, going back to the zoning district, if you look part of the regulation that was done by the state, zoning districts are gonna be on this page here, I don't know what page it is. Zoning district, a geographic area within a municipality which pursuant to zoning are subject to use requirements that are generally uniform throughout the area. So that goes on to say, in those non-conforming areas maybe, or the industrial zone, if I understood it right. The part that I'm confused with a little bit is the parking for for it. In the regulation, it's kind of a couple different areas that are not too clear, but in the one being drafted by the town, it says one AUD will put a off-street parking. And then it has this some specifications, I guess, about the half mile. But they also allow, if I don't know if it's more than a mile, half mile, or less than a half mile, that they allow on-street parking. So I guess I would need some more clarification on that.
Yeah, I can provide clarification.
Okay, go ahead.
So the requirement is that the ADU include one off-street parking unless it is within half a mile of a bus station. And then the definition I read earlier would be the definition for Southbridge of what a bus station is.
Right, so the bus station would be the route that WRTA travels.
Yes. So
Does the route include the minivans that are traveling converses throughout the whole community? Because it is a regional transit authority that are traveling. So I guess I would like clarification on that. We do have a bus route that comes up Main Street, Central Street, I believe Main Street, goes to Big Bunny's, goes to all the places. So a half mile, by the way the crow flies, is quite distance. So under a half mile is allowable on-street parking.
you can waive the requirement for one off-street parking within half a mile of a bus station, which is the designated route of the WRTA
Okay.
in Southbridge.
And that half-mile determination, again, is done through the building department? So, okay, let me see if I got one other thing. Okay, the other thing that was, again, more than one additional on-street or off-street parking spaces for each protected use ADU on a lot, if all portions of such lot are located outside of a half mile. See where it's confusing, outside the half mile or inside the half mile? So
Which
this was
definition are you reading?
It's gonna be under prohibited regulations. Would have been under 7103, number 2.
Outside the half mile, you need to provide that one spot. Inside the half mile, you can waive that. You don't
Okay,
need to
that
provide
answers my question. Again, where it goes unit caps and density, any limit, quota, or other restrictions on the municipality of protected use ADUs that may be permitted, constructed, or leased within the municipality or zoning district, protected use ADUs shall not be counted in the density calculation. So I guess that's what I'm saying is plus the housing, that kind of stuff, so it's not considered. Okay, I think that's all I got at the moment.
Councilor Dow,
I've got other things.
Ms. Clemens.
Yeah, I was just gonna, so, just to be clear, anywhere along so if anybody didn't get, anywhere along the WRTA route, that is established route, a half mile anywhere along, your distance from the route itself, it is the route that is considered an entire bus station in our town.
Yes.
Because you have a flag anywhere on that route.
Yes.
So the entire route is a bus station.
Yes.
And any half mile point beyond that, so a side street that goes off of it or whatever, as long as you can walk a half mile to get to that route, you can then flag and say you're at a bus station.
Yes.
Okay, or just slightly under, whatever it is. Okay, just making sure we're all clear.
Just one point
Mr.
clarification.
Julian?
Bus route, we're talking about the bus itself, not the van buses. Because the van buses go to a lot of little neighborhoods.
But
That are
can I just
designated
ask, are
routes.
Those, they're designated?
They're designated to go pick
But
up
aren't they-
people at these houses. That's a
For a
designated
specific
route.
purpose though, but not for anybody, not anyone can flag them.
They go through the development down there, or what is that, tag, whatever that is now. I don't know the name of it.
Living Hill housing.
Living
But
Hill
not
housing,
everybody
that's
is
it.
accessible to that, only the tag people then.
No, that RTA bus, you can call and have them pick you up.
Call.
Call, right, but you
But
can't
that's-
flag them.
But that's a designated route that they go on, isn't
But
it?
it's, I think,
You have to be able to flag.
yeah,
Right.
You have to be
Okay.
able
has to
to
be
flag.
accessible.
Okay, that's why I'm asking for clarification.
Okay. All right.
That's what I was kind of.
Right.
Anybody else? Mr. Town Manager?
Yeah, through you. Yeah, I think the difference with that specifically is the WITA route is established with a route map
Mm-hmm.
published that says this is the route. Whereas those are, hey, I need a ride today.
Okay.
I think that's, those WITAs are run by the seniors too, I think, right? Is it a couple of seniors,
Well, I
whatever.
think all
But
of
there's
us-
different things, but I think that's a specific call, so that would be totally,
Okay.
that flag. Secondly, with the plan, I think if we were to put this through, we would have to add in some definitions to our bylaw to say, this is the definitions of these certain elements, to make it clear within the bylaw to say, you know, what a bus station is, right? Like, I would say we want to clarify that in some definitions and include those in that. And that's all for right now.
Yeah, just, so, do you want to go first, John?
No, doesn't matter. Continue.
It's just clarification. So I actually called today because I was concerned about the understanding as to why it was going to, I guess you're going to council to ask for a hearing, but don't you guys just have hearings sometimes anyway for public input? Or does it always have to be, I'm curious about that.
So, if I may, through KP Law's guidance, is the planning board can schedule a public hearing, the town council also has to schedule a public hearing, or you can do it jointly.
Okay.
So the purpose of this was to say, is it ready to go for a public hearing to be held during, either individually or jointly with the planning board?
Right. It was just what I was like, wait, did I miss something? And then my biggest concern was when I heard that the new regulation, you know, the state had come out, and then we had these, and I realized the planning board has worked long and hard to get something done because the state, as usual, you know, throws things in and we jump. And I was concerned that, like you just said, it now has to be adapted or refitted to work on with what's even been discussed today or the questions and concerns that come up. So I just thought it was a preemptive. But I understand the timeline, Katie explained, you know, the timeline to me. But so saying that again, I feel like we're jumping ahead without having a document that's completely credible to send to a hearing to, you know, I don't know.
I was just gonna ask, is it your recommendation to go back, redo this, get the definitions in, get all that in, then come back?
Right, if I may.
Go ahead. If I just could remind everybody, please be recognized by the chair before we start talking, so we're not having, it's not a free-for-all. So, Mr. Town Manager.
The purpose of this is anything has to be, you know, give a recommendation to go to town council. The purpose of this is this recommended to go to town council to recommend a public hearing, or is it go back to planning board with some input to come, you know, to come back, or do you send it the way it is to the public hearing, then you incorporate those changes at the public hearing for final adoption? Because it still has to go for 3 readings to the town council. So typically it's, you recommend, you gather all the input during the public hearing, and you incorporate those changes through the public hearing process. So I think we're just trying to lessen how much we, you know, if there was information that council needed, further information, or maybe some other things based on the law that came out and tweaks, do we tweak it? Or go back to the planning board, let's tweak it, let's see how it looks, then schedule the public hearing so that we're kind of on the same page going to a joint public hearing. That's kind of the goal.
Could I respond to my concern?
Yes.
So the only thing I'd say is, whatever you bring up for the public hearing is accurate as you are. I mean, I don't mean, maybe they can incorporate and bring it forward to what's been discussed today, however you want to make that vote tonight. But to bring something that you know has some real specifics that have to be fixed to a public hearing, it confuses the public. They're gonna have a lot more questions, so why create more questions? Why not bring it to them the way it should read, so that they have less questions, hopefully? I mean, they may still have lots of questions or lots of concerns, but if you already know there are some problems that the planner already knows there's, or the building inspector, somebody already knows there's problems, at least either make the vote to say to incorporate what's been discussed and send it, I don't know, do something different. I don't think in its current form it should go to public hearing. So I think that should be addressed in some way. We don't speak for the planning board though, so.
Yes.
The planning board was kind of, I won't say it was spinning our wheels, but we were unsure of the state's definitions. We were, after this, our last go at it, we'd asked the inspectors, they were busy trying to get state input also, so they weren't able to give us their input on it. And we figured that we'd give it the best shot we could by putting the state's definition in there as it existed and what we thought was going to be the correct definitions and the correct terminology to be used, and that was our shot at it. Some of the information we've heard tonight, or I've heard, is different than what the planning board thought was going to be in there. So we needed the inspectors to help us. They were learning from the state what to do. We just haven't been able to make a good conversation between them and us to get this in a format that looks like we didn't throw it at you guys that way. It's just that was our best shot at it. After 6 weeks, we figured, well, let's do something.
Thank you,
Councilor
Chair,
Dow.
for you. When you say special permit cannot be denied, if the lot doesn't fit any other building, you need like the setback, the legal setback in town, you cannot deny that.
Site
Okay.
plan review, I'm sorry.
Correct, but let's say if the lot doesn't fit the second building on, you need 10 feet on one side, 20 feet or 30 feet from the back, and doesn't have that fit, you can still say no?
No.
Because you say state-
If it doesn't meet the setbacks that are required, it would have to file for variance, which can be denied.
So it's not like, it can be denied, you
It
can't
can
just-
be denied.
So
Under
it's subject to.
Under certain
Okay.
regulations.
Okay.
That's why I said, I'd have to look at, each case is gonna be
Different.
separate. Each one's gonna be different.
So now if somebody came and say, hey, this is the state by law and you're giving me your bylaw, I'm gonna go over with the state, what will protect the town? Because technically the state over everybody seeing,
Right.
so,
It's allowed by right, but under the Dover Amendment, under the Dover Act, it's allowed by right, but it still has to meet our qualifications for setbacks, regulations, our local regulations.
Height.
Our height. We can't go increase it and make it worse for them,
so,
but we can make them follow what we have in place.
Chairman, continue.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So why are we wasting our time not saying we will adopt the bylaw from the state, subject to the circumstance, the town, or whatever you wanna call it, and we put it there and it's done deal? Why we have to write another 10 pages? We adopt the state bylaw the way it is, and we added a few lines saying, subject to this, whatever meet the requirement, and that's it. Then you leave yourself in the spaces, okay, we're working with the state bylaw, but we have to meet some certain requirement here to be able to approve it. I think that's the easy, simple way, but then go ahead and everybody telling different stories.
Through the chair, the
Hey.
state's smart, okay? They're not writing bylaws. They're writing down what they want, and they're leaving it, they're putting everybody in a hard spot, because what everybody's trying to do right now is they're trying to catch up with what the state put out there without telling anybody, and now all of a sudden, we're chasing our tails trying to make things work that our zoning requires. So we have to put something out. So putting out the state regulation,
Plus.
yes, is the best. And then us adding to it with our own regulations. But there's only certain things we can add.
That's what I
because-
mean, I think not specific language there, what
Right.
our regulation is.
Yeah.
just leave it to our requirement, the town
Yeah.
bylaw requirement, meet the standard to be able to do the
The state's not
ADU.
waiting for us to, well, I mean, if we wait for the state to write a bylaw and get it right, it's never gonna happen. So they're waiting for us to write it so they can adopt it and say, okay, yes, this is the one we're gonna use, whether it's Southbridge, whether it's Munson, whether it's Sturbridge, Webster, or a combination of them all. They're gonna put their own piece together and they're gonna say, okay, and it'll probably take a year. But for that year, we have to be able to survive without making huge mistakes. And that's the key here. You know,
That's what I'm saying, is you leave yourself in a,
We don't wanna leave
in the
ourselves
open,
wide open.
in the open, be able to argue whatever come to
Right.
apply for it.
Yeah.
We're not going against the state, but you still have to meet the
You still have
town
to-
requirement,
yeah,
you
You
know?
still have to meet our requirements.
Because if you put certain language here, oh, you need this site plan reviewed, and you forget one line,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're gonna hold it against us and say, hey, you don't have it on here, you forgot one line, but if you
Right.
put like straight language, subject to meet town bylaw requirement to be able to do the ADU, you
Even
know?
if you're gonna build a church in this town and it wasn't gonna meet the setbacks, well, they're gonna have to go for a variance for the setbacks. They can either reduce the church to make it fit, or they can go for the variance. That can get them denied, but if they come back and say, okay, you know what, we lost the variance, we're gonna reduce the size of the church, now they're back on. You know, so there's a lot of, as soon as it's protected, there's a lot involved.
Thank you.
Councilor Chenier.
I think most important, I think this needs to go back to the planning board and the building department to work together. I would like to see the site approval, the site plan approval struck, and it say that if determined by the building department, when determined by the building department, it shall go before the planning board for approval, or for site plan approval. I don't want to give people more bureaucracy to go. You want to build the property, you want to make an ADU, you come to the building department says, oh, you're gonna go before the planning board. The planning board has to get together, they meet every couple of weeks, hoping to have a quorum, and sometimes they have the quorum, most of the time they do, but it's just adding more levels of government to something I think that can be handled by the department. So I will make a motion that we refer this back to the planning board and direct, I don't know if that's the word to use, direct the building department to work in hands together and come back with a draft with the suggestions that they heard tonight and maybe clarify some things better. And I'll make that into a motion.
Second. Discussion on the motion.
Yeah. Just
Clemens?
discussion on the motion. I guess I'm just nervous when you said direct, I mean, you can direct the building department, I guess, to do things, but, I mean, the planning board is a quasi-judicial board, so we want to be very careful as to what we, you see, I'd like it to read this way. You can give ideas,
It's an
but let's
idea.
not direct a quasi-judicial board to do, you
The
know.
inspection department fulfills the work of the planning board. They do the work of the planning board, the enforcements of the planning board, not the, it's brought to the planning board if there's a problem. The inspections department sees that the planning board orders or conditions are being met, and
Right,
to
but
make a change, it goes before the planning board. In the past, we've had other people make changes with the planning board not even knowing about it.
Right, but the planning board makes,
Right.
the planning board will do the final submission again.
Right, and again, all I'm saying is, and my idea is that if you don't need to go to the planning board, that determination should be made by the building inspector, the building, either one of them determines, as he said, he determines that now. I would like it to, the bylaw to read that.
Right,
Oh,
but
it's just as
ultimately,
if
the
they might come
planning
back
board's
to-
gonna send something back to you, and you
Right.
either approve it or you don't.
Right, and I
And you
understand
can-
that, and we
I'm
can
just
change
saying,
it
that's
during
all, I'm
council.
just- It was just a
I
matter
just
of.
don't wanna see a document come before council as written and somehow slip through the grapevine and we're accepting a document that's faulty. And the other concern I have is the Munson document. I cannot find the final draft that's been approved by the Attorney General's office. I see the one that the town people voted on, but it has all changed the law since that regulation was put together. And what was disturbing a little bit is the fact that they used the Munson document to go guidance, and we're two totally different towns of regulations and the type of people that live. You have more rural than they have like us, but that's my motion.
Yes.
The Munson document given to us by Ken was a help that we asked for, because that was the only document that we had in the area that would have helped us at all, because nobody else had anything, but Ken had that, gave it to us. He says, well, this is what we've done over here as a start anyway. That was a starting point for us. We had no input from any other regional area or town. And the planning board is more than willing to take this back, along with the building inspectors, to get the language correct. Like I say, they've learned more things in the last 6 weeks than we were aware of that would be pertinent to this document that we were not aware of.
I don't think you can do that.
Oh,
It's public.
yeah, you're right.
You're not supposed to whisper things to each other.
Ms. Dean,
Yes, so,
Sorry.
I guess
Just
a comment and a
have
question.
sense.
My first comment
So
was,
we don't have something.
Ms. Dean. you
my
have the
first
floor.
comment was, I'm surprised that the town, or what I'm hearing here, is not being interested in having more local codified input. And however the town chooses to take it, it's the town's temperature, right? So, should you want to say we have no bylaw and we're going to just adopt the state's, and you could choose to do that, or you chose to codify more. I guess I'd be curious, if you were going to try to include the town's powers on this, does anybody have a strong opinion about what would be included, or what should be or could be included, to make it a stronger or better bylaw?
Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Chair, to you. I don't think you understand what I said. You're just saying, we're just gonna adopt the state and no bylaw, local bylaw strong to protect it. The state will come above anybody. We have to take the state the way it is. And then what I said, we can add it, the requirement, the town bylaw requirement at the end, but I'm sitting and write different line, different thing, and then we forgot a couple of items. Now we're gonna fight with the person coming forward. So we adopt the state bylaw, and we write on the bottom, subject to the town approval, bylaw requirement, whatever the building inspection and the planning board will add it. Couple of words down there that will protect the town and everywhere. That I think is a strong word when you say subject to local requirement, what is plan approval, building inspection, setback, high, low, whatever. There's no argument here anymore. You adopt everything the town put already in the past. Thank you.
Councilor Chenier.
Just to clarify myself, is the reason is that I'm tired of hearing the people come before us saying the bureaucracy of the town, there's so much of it. I would guess that is the same reason why we voted down the 7-member redevelopment design committee. It was to eliminate some bureaucracy that we put people through. I don't want to take the powers away from the planning board, the conservation committee, or any of those kind of things. They do good work. All I'm just trying to say is we have a building department, inspection department, that determines what should be done, and so why are we gonna duplicate it by sending it to the planning board when maybe it doesn't have to go there? The determination would be made by the building inspector if it needed to go before the planning board. Not as says here, all ADUs. I mean, the word all tells me that they're all gonna go there. So it's not to take away from the board, I'm just trying to make the level of bureaucracy a little bit easier for the residents that are going to possibly do an ADU or some other subjects. That's all.
Yes.
I would just like to make a clarification on current site plan approval process always goes through building department first. They always refer any site plan is based on their initial decision. And any other addition to that would follow that same requirement. I would also like to address the concern about if the state would have issues with something that came up all drafts, the state has told us, will go through the Attorney General's office before they go into effect, so.
So on the motion, any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor right now? All right, so that being said, just to make sure, clarify what we're voting on right now, we're voting on a motion from Councilor Chenier to return the ADU bylaw to the planning board for further revision in compliance with 760 CMR 71. Is that accurate?
To include the building department. So they both get together.
I will take that as a matter of town manager preference to make sure that they coordinate directly.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay. So all those in favor? All those opposed? 4-1. Passed.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So reading that, what you just said makes total sense, except, so we're reading, and I got Mr. Shenier's point, Councilor Shenier's point, all ADUs are required to obtain the site plan pursuant to procedures in section 2.6 of this zoning bylaw. Well, of course, we don't have the 90-page zoning bylaw in front of us, provided that the state plan review criteria shall only be limited to that. So so in section 2.6 of the zoning bylaw, does it say the areas that say go to, is there an order of operation, so to speak? Like if you're residential, you go to the building inspector, and if you don't need something.
Through the chair, that section, yes, explains the process of site plan approval. There is also our table 1 from section 4 of the bylaw, which outlines which uses would be considered site plan approval. And that is what the building department references to when they recommend something for site plan approval.
So unfortunately, yeah, so I mean, I get that it's still confusing because it's got the all thing, and then it's got a pursuant to procedures in. So if procedures in say you don't need it, it's kind of an odd way of writing it, to say all and then there, I guess. It depends on what the council.
Councilor Chenier.
The funny thing about it, if you read the regulations set by the state, if we have zoning bylaws that conflict with the ADU regulations,
Then
they're unenforceable. So not knowing what that whole bylaw, if our bylaw doesn't mention anything about ADUs through it, or if it says ADUs are prohibited, because some of the other communities around, ADUs were prohibited. So it's understanding what is the right of a person. There's not many single-family homes that went before the planning board. None that I've seen in recent years to go into the planning board. So my feeling is, why does an ADU if it meets the requirements of the building department? So I mean, I can build, for instance, in my son's house. I don't need an ADU permit. I can go just by right of a 2-family, put a second family home in there, and as long as I stay within the footprint. So I guess it's why are we going to do that? And then the biggest thing, if any of our bylaws conflict with the regulations set by the state in the definitions and regulations they got forward, they're unenforceable, it tells you.
Oh, I know we need a bylaw. I was just saying the way that was reading. I was just pointing out that 2.6 might have some clarification for us, but I can understand it really helps to have something more definitely written out. People makes it easier on people coming into our community or doing this.
So going back to agenda item number 3, which now that we had voted to return the bylaw for further revision, should we get a motion to table agenda item number 3 pending resubmission of the bylaw to...
I'll make a motion to postpone item 3 until this comes back.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Okay. Moving on to agenda number 4. Adjournment.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.